911, address of the emergency.
Yes. My son just called me, and he told me oh my God, North Carolina, he killed his baby.
Some flowers in front of the scene where police here in Knightdale were first called on Earlston Court around 9 a.m. for a welfare check. When they got here, they discovered the body of 7-month-old Bennett Pladl. Now,
a developing story this noon hour, a case of incest, murder, and suicide leaves 2 people dead here in Connecticut and 3 different states now investigating.
In breaking news this evening, a multi-state investigation along the East Coast that ended tragically in Connecticut.
Yeah, it all started in North Carolina with an alleged incestual relationship between a father and a daughter.
Today, we're examining a complex saga of domestic abuse, manipulation, incest, and murder. It reveals colossal failures at multiple turns to protect vulnerable victims from a predator in their midst. This tangled story spans decades, beginning in Levittown, New York in 1995. 20-year-old Stephen Plato was known as a bullied, isolated young man prone to concerning anger issues. He often lost jobs for his volatile temper. Seeking connection, Stephen turned to the early internet, interacting in chat rooms. There, he met a 15-year-old girl named Alyssa from Texas. Despite the stark age gap and distance, they built an intimate relationship online. Desperate to meet his underage online girlfriend, Stephen took a long bus trip to Texas. Just as he'd hoped, they quickly hit it off. Smitten, Alyssa ran away from home to be with Stephen. At just 16, she became pregnant, but Stephen's inner demons emerged rapidly. Unemployed, he relied on Alyssa financially. Worse, he physically and emotionally abused the vulnerable teen. When their baby girl Denise was born, Alyssa made a chilling discovery: bruises all over her body. When confronted, Stephen admitted to brutally pinching the newborn to silence her cries. To protect her child, 16-year-old Alyssa faced the excruciating choice to put Denise up for adoption at 8 months old. Denise was adopted by Tony and Kelly Fusco, a couple in Dover, New York. They renamed her Katie, and finally, she was safe from harm. But back in Texas, Alyssa stayed with abusive Stephen. Over the next 20 years, his manipulation and threats continued, keeping her trapped. Somehow, they had 2 more children together in 2007 and 2012. But the damage was done. Alyssa was isolated, dominated by Stephen's coercion and volatility. His threats kept her afraid to leave. Meanwhile, Katie flourished with her adoptive parents. She developed into a bright, talented teen full of creativity. Katie graduated high school in 2016, excited for college. But she couldn't silence one question: who were her biological parents? Now 18, Katie used social media to contact Alyssa and Stephen in Texas. They immediately bonded over messages. Drawn to her roots, Katie chose to move there, forgoing college plans. At first, Stephen seemed overjoyed, dramatically changing his appearance to impress his newly discovered daughter. But warning signs quickly appeared. He defiantly slept in Katie's room, refusing to leave when confronted. In November, after over 20 years of turmoil, Alyssa finally separated from Stephen. But Katie stayed behind, increasingly under his sway. With Alyssa gone, Stephen's twisted desires emerged. He fell in love with his own daughter. Just months after divorcing Alyssa, Stephen married 18-year-old Katie in his backyard, surrounded by family. Katie soon became pregnant with Stephen's child, a living result of their incest. But in January 2018, Stephen and Katie were arrested for incest after Alyssa uncovered their relationship. Though released on bail and ordered not to contact each other, immense damage was already done. Katie gave birth to Stephen's son, Bennett. As Katie came to her senses, she broke it off with Stephen for good. Unable to accept losing his daughter and lover, Stephen unraveled. On April 11, 2018, he picked up baby Bennett and drove 500 miles to confront Katie in New York. The next day, while following Katie and her adoptive dad, Tony, Stephen committed the unthinkable. At a busy intersection, he pulled up and fired a rifle multiple times, killing them both. Witnesses identified the shooter as Stephen. He was found dead hours later from a self-inflicted gunshot after a short manhunt. Chillingly, he had also smothered baby Bennett first.
911, address of the emergency.
Yes. My son just called me, and he told me oh my God, in North Carolina, he killed his baby, and he's in the house.
Okay, you said that he told you he killed his baby.
Oh my
Okay, ma'am, listen to me. What's your name? Okay, tell me exactly what happened.
He's not home. His wife broke up with him over the phone yesterday, and he told me, she's in New York, and he told me he was on his way. He called me last night and said he's on his way. He's going to bring the baby to her, and then he was coming back. And he just
Okay.
he said he killed his wife, he killed her father, and I can't even believe this is happening.
Okay. And did this happen in Nightdale?
No, his wife and father are in New York.
Okay,
And,
so the incident
but
actually...
he left the baby dead when he left.
Okay,
New
where
York
did he leave the baby?
Okay, he said it was in the...
What's your son's name? What's his last name?
Same as mine.
When did this happen?
He said he left last night. He called me, I forget, maybe about 7 last night, and said he was on his way to New York. He was going to bring to his wife and give it to her, and then he'd be back. And he called me this morning. I just got up the phone just a couple of minutes ago, and oh God, he told me to call the police, that I shouldn't go over there.
Okay, so the son is so your son is not there?
No, the house is empty. He said he put a key under the front mat. A key to get into the house under the front mat.
Did he say how he did it, or what he did?
And I didn't ask him. I didn't want to know. Oh my God, he's such a wonderful little.
Okay, hold on just a second, okay? Okay.
Hello?
Okay, I'm still here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get you over to Raleigh Communications, okay? Let me talk first when I call, okay, so I can kind of give them an idea of what was going on, and then I'm going to let you speak with a telecommunicator, okay? All right, hold on for me, okay?
A developing story this noon hour, a case of incest, murder, and suicide leaves 2 people dead here in Connecticut and 3 different states now investigating. News 8's Ken Pierce live in News 8 Control this midday with the very latest from police in New Milford. Good afternoon, Ken.
Good afternoon to you, Keith. And police now say that 20-year-old Katie Plato and 56-year-old Anthony Fusco were killed in his pickup truck in New Milford yesterday by multiple gunshots from an assault rifle. Police say pulling that trigger was Stephen Plato, who was Katie's father, husband, and father of her baby. The story behind the gunfire near the New York-Connecticut border was all summed up in a heartbreaking 911 call in North Carolina.
He killed his baby.
That's the mother of Stephen Plato. She technically had custody of 7-month-old Bennett Plato, but her son Stephen had him Wednesday, and that's when he got a phone call.
His wife broke up with him over the phone yesterday.
By wife, she means 20-year-old Katie Plato, who was also Stephen's daughter. She was adopted at birth by the Fusco family in Wingdale, New York. At 18, she wanted to find her birth parents. She did, even moving in with them and eventually sleeping with and marrying her biological father. Her mother moved out and called police.
You may recall that those individuals were the subject of an arrest here in Nightdale back in January 2018.
Courts there ordered her to move back in with her adoptive parents in New York. Police say she was running errands with her adoptive father, Anthony Fusco, yesterday. Stephen Plato drove hundreds of miles after killing the baby and was following them.
He killed his wife, he killed her father, and I can't even believe this is talk to me.
And did this happen in Nightdale?
No. His wife and father are in New York.
Police say they were at a stop sign in nearby New Milford when Pladl opened fire with an assault rifle.
The father that raised her, the adoptive father, she had came up here staying with him in Wingdale, and next thing you know, there's a shooting.
Pladl called his mother to confess everything, then he drove back to Wingdale, New York.
Responding officers on scene were able to determine that the suspect in this case had died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
So I know this case is confusing. To sum it up, Stephen Plato married his daughter. When she wanted to break up, he killed their baby in North Carolina, then drove to New Milford, Connecticut, and killed her and her adoptive father, and then he killed himself. All that, according to police and Stephen's mother's call to 911 that you just heard there. Live in News 8 Control, I'm Kent Pierce, News 8.
Some flowers in front of this scene where police here in Nightdale were first called on Earlston Court around 9 a.m. for a welfare check. When they got here, they discovered the body of 7-month-old Bennett Pladl. Now, up in New Milford, Connecticut, police there working a double shooting. The two victims in that case, 20-year-old Katie Plato and her adopted father, 56-year-old Anthony Fusco, both dead. And a short while later, just across the state border into New York, state troopers found the body of 45-year-old Stephen Plato. Authorities believe he committed suicide. Now, it was Grace Plato, the mother of Stephen, who called police yesterday morning with concerns about her grandson, 7-month-old Bennett. Police have released a redacted version of that 911 call. Here is a short clip of Grace Plato speaking at the dispatch.
My son just called me, and he told me oh my God, in North Carolina, he killed his baby, and he's in the house.
Nightdale Police Chief Lawrence Cap said it is believed Stephen Plato was in this area as recently as yesterday. Chief Capps would not disclose an approximate time or manner of death for Bennett. The incest charges involving Stephen and Katie are from January, stemming from Virginia. The pair was arrested here in Wake County. Now this afternoon, investigators in those states trying to piece together a timeline of what happened, when, and what led to these events. We will have reports coming up at 4, 5, and 6, and of course, keeping you updated on abc11.com.
In just 2 days, Stephen had wrought immeasurable devastation, fueled by his twisted obsessions. This complex tragedy defies simple explanation. It reveals colossal failures to protect Katie at multiple critical junctures. As an infant, as a teen finding her biological family, and as a young woman falling victim to incest, she was failed repeatedly. Alyssa must now agonizingly mourn the loss of the very child she gave up to save. She questions if warnings about Stephen might have protected Katie from his manipulation. Katie's adoptive parents also missed chances to intervene as she grew dangerously close to her biological father. And when laws were broken, the justice system did not take adequate measures to monitor and separate Stephen and Katie. Could this tragedy have been prevented if the threats were recognized sooner? Might Katie have been sheltered from her father if Alyssa's warnings were heeded? If Katie's adoptive parents had been less acquiescing and willing to set firmer boundaries, could they have protected her from the fatal attraction? We may never find satisfactory answers, but cases like these serve as tough reminders that darkness can fester anywhere, even within families. Predators like Stephen know how to groom the vulnerable, and once in motion, the consequences span generations. This story decimated Katie's future in the most heartbreaking way possible. It's a painful reminder that even with the best intent, sometimes evil still prevails. But we must not look away or become desensitized. Only by facing horror can we hope to stop it.